jump in. Awesome. So welcome. You've got three of us here today to talk with you about social work degree planning. So my name's Jackie Orsetto, and I'm the academic advisor affiliated with West Bank Colleges. We've got Jennifer Walsh-Hopkins, whose college affiliation is Zosky, and then Kennedy Close, who's the academic coordinator from the Department of Social Work. So I'm assuming if you don't know Jen or I, you probably know or have heard from Kennedy. So today, what we're doing is we're going to cover options for designing your unique undergraduate degree in social work and also talk about backup degrees. We're going to go over how academic advisors and Kennedy can support you in this process. We'll talk through some of the admission requirements and the package for applying to the professional years. Some basic Zoom administrative stuff. We just ask that you keep your microphones muted when others are speaking, but you're absolutely welcome to raise your hand if you have a question throughout the presentation. We'll also hold space at the end for questions. And you can put questions into the chat as well, and we'll try to keep our eye on that. And if we can't come to it during the presentation, we'll definitely see how much time we have at the end for it.
Sorry, before we get started, can everyone see the closed captions that I turned on? Or is that just for me?
I think it's just for you, Kennedy.
Okay. Is there a way, Jen, we can turn on closed captioning for everyone?
When I click the closed captioning button, it actually will come up. I can see it.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know if I can do it from my area. I don't know, Jackie, if you have a closed captioning.
Well, I'm thinking what Amanda said makes sense, because on my end, I see a note at the top, a participant has enabled closed captioning, who can see this transcript. So I think everyone should see that notation at the top. And if Amanda can, who's not a host, then I'm thinking it should be working.
Okay, great. I'm clicking. There we go.
So our agenda for the next hour, we're going to talk through the academic calendar. That is the big book of rules. It is what I tell students, it's why I have a job. Most of my job is helping students navigate their way through the academic calendar, which contains lots of important information about majors, joint majors, your program requirements, add-ons to your degree, university regulations. And then once we work our way through academic calendar content, we'll go to talking about the BSW admissions timeline and package, and throughout that weaving in some components of how to build your educational map.
Okay, so the academic calendar is that big book that Jackie was referring to. Actually, sorry. It is typically a big book, or that's how I used it when I was a student. Most of you probably access it as a PDF file through Trent. So that's what we're referring to. And I'll just note, we've had a couple of people join us since Jackie gave this note, but we are recording this. So just note that this is a recorded Zoom. So the academic calendar, you are going to find it in your Trent under the Register tab. And this will provide you a link to the most recent academic calendar. So this year it is the 2023 academic calendar. It's important to note that it is always the link to the most recent academic calendar, because for some of you, particularly if social work professional years is not where you end up, you may want to use a previous academic calendar versus the most recent one when you're viewing it. And that's something that you can access through the calendar website, through the Trent University website. But when you're using the academic calendar, things that are going to be available in here are important dates and deadlines. This type of information is available as soon as the academic calendar is posted, which is typically end of May. So you'll have information about things like reading breaks, drop deadlines, add deadlines, all kind of by that time. So you're going to have that information very early on in advance of the school year starting. You'll also find information about academic rules and regulations, things like your program requirements, so social work program requirements or other backup programs that you may be looking at. The university degree requirements, which sometimes students forget to reference because you're so focused on your program requirements. Now, luckily in the social work program, it really kind of covers most of those university requirements. So there's not a lot that you need to think of in addition, but there are typically 2 sets of requirements that you do need to be focusing on when working your way towards the end of your degree. And then a little key that if you are, so depending on your program, particularly this might be more salient if you're not in the professional years of the BSW program, if your program requirements change, which calendar do you use? And you can go back to use previous calendars as long as you've been a registered student in that major during those years. So for some of you that may have impacts if you're a social work student now and don't get into the professional years and need to kind of change majors and move back. That is also where an academic advisor can help add some clarification as well. So the next couple of slides, we're going to go through information, and this should be kind of viewed particularly as if you're making a backup plan. So this isn't going to be social work specific yet. It will become social work specific in a few slides, but Jackie's going to go over some of the building blocks on making a backup plan and how that can integrate in your planning with social work.
Yeah, so yeah, the disclaimer with this is don't panic because you see sociology on this slide. We use that as an example, just one example of a possible backup plan. And in a few slides, Jen's going to go over the general year requirements for social work. For the next few slides, I wanted to talk about the backup plan if you happen to not get into the professional years. So we encourage all students to think about all students in the social work general years to think about what a backup plan might be. And so you're in the unique position of, as you're planning your time, you want to account for the social work requirements and then also the requirements for a possible backup plan. And so part of our intention today is helping you get more comfortable with the academic calendar rules and regulations, if you're not already, to help you arm you with the tools to really create a comprehensive plan for both the BSW and a possible backup. So in this example, if your backup plan, say, happen to be sociology, you need to follow the social rules in the calendar in conjunction with your social work requirements. So on the left side there, you can see for an honors degree, so with sociology as a single major, you need 10 credits in sociology, which means you have room for 10.0 electives. So half of your degree in sociology, half of your degree is electives. In those electives, there's lots of room to fit the social work general year requirements in there. I won't be covering joint majors today since your goal is really the BSW. Likely if you're here, that's an assumption, but if you're here, I'm assuming your goal is to get into the professional years. So we're not going to go in detail about joint majors. We'll talk about a few different combinations in the next few slides, but just wanted to name, you're not limited to doing a single major if you choose a backup option. On the right side of that slide, we just drew your attention to the fact that sometimes a backup plan is switching from an honors degree to a general. So if you did that using sociology as a major, you actually have more space for electives than are required for the soc major. Then on the next slide, the next 2 slides sort of talk about add-ons. So this one is really drawing attention to how if you want in your backup plan to focus on a particular major and then specialize in something, you can do that. And that typically doesn't add credit. So the example I put on this slide is, let's say you do Soc as a backup major, an honors degree, and then you choose to specialize in health studies. Well, all the health studies requirements can actually be used to fulfill your sociology major requirements, which is helpful and efficient. You want to read the academic calendar really carefully when it comes to add-ons to see what the parameters are. So for this example with the specialization in health studies, it's only available for honors Soc majors. So if you happened to do a general sociology major, then you wouldn't be able to add the specialization to it. In other programs, they restrict specializations to single majors rather than joint major folks. So all of that is to say the calendar contains the fine print with these important bits of information. And then on the next slide, we draw your attention to more add-ons. So adding a minor or an option. So you might, within this option, or no, the word option, I always struggle when I say that because I'm like, we could have come up with a better word. So if we use a different example and think of a gender and social justice major, let's say you want to have a smaller focus on a different discipline. So the specialization was saying, in my major, I'm going to focus in on this area. In this example, you might want to add a minor or an option to really concentrate your energy in a different discipline. You can't add minors to a general degree. So again, on the right side of the slide, you'll see that it just lists option there and the minor is not listed. You can have both a minor and an option on the honors side. But again, reading the academic calendar to see if there's any restrictions around which options you can pair with your major and that sort of thing. An option is usually a total of 4 credits. Minors are typically 5. And within the options, they pull from multiple disciplines to really create an area of focus or concentration that we don't have in another major or minor. If you are looking for the options in the calendar, they're listed at the back under the special programs and opportunities section.
Okay, thank you, Jackie. Okay, so now more of the focus on the social work program. So here is the calendar copy or information from the academic calendar about the first 2 years in the social work program. We refer to these as general years, which can be confusing because we also have honors and general degrees. So these general years in a social work context do not refer to a general degree. The BSW program, though it doesn't have honors in the title, is an honors 4-year full-time study program. So when I say general years specifically in a social work capacity, it means the first 2 years. So everyone needs to take or have transferred in the 4 social work intro courses. So that's social work 1000, 1001, 2001, 2004. Typically, if you're a transfer student, you may come in with 1000, 1001. Very rarely, never do folks come in with social work 2001, 2004. And then and to note that you need to be achieving these courses at a 70% average or higher to be eligible for admissions consideration into the professional years. So that's a 70% in each of these courses. Now that's a minimum requirement, not necessarily a competitive average for admissions to the professional years. Then the remaining requirements under year 1 and year 2 are going to be met with courses outside of the social work program. So the second line under year 1 and year 2 is 3 credits at the 1000 level or beyond, or 2000 level or beyond in a humanities, social sciences, or psychology. In the next slide, we're going to review what are the various different kind of humanities courses or programs, social science programs. And the reason psychology is broken out from that list is because psychology is technically a science degree at Trent. And so psychology, we wanted psychology to be included in this requirement, which is why specifically psychology is named. The final bullet point under year 1 and year 2 is 1.0 credit in addition to the above. This should be read that it can be any level and any program. So it could be a pure science. If you have biology, that's great. That would go there. For some students, it may be helpful to meet with an academic advisor because though it could be any level for social work requirements, depending on transfer credits or depending on if you've already made your way through part of a Trent degree, there may be some guidance that is helpful to know or some context to know around that 1 credit in addition to the above. But if you're kind of starting from scratch, it can be really like any program, any level, including at the 1000 level. I'm just looking at my notes here. So students in these general years can have a social work as your declared major, but you also don't have to. So any student can apply to the professional years of the social work program, whether they are declared social work major at the time or not. Where some benefits may come in. For example, if you're making psych your backup and you're taking, say, some psych courses in your 2nd year at Trent, actually being a psych major can have some advantages because during priority registration, you would get access to psych courses as a psych major. So it would give you just access to those courses earlier. Social work doesn't open up their courses, the 2001 and 2004 during kind of priority reg to only social work students. So those courses are open to everybody in priority reg. So there's no advantage there, but in a course like say psychology, there would be in that sense. For the, and Kennedy's going to go over this as well, there are program and grade requirements that you need to meet for the professional years. So meeting a 70% in each of the social work courses that are listed there, as well as having a cumulative average of 70% in all of your courses that are at Trent. If you're a transfer student, we do not access your former school's grades. We look at the transfer credits, but they are not used in terms of grade calculation. So if you knocked it out of the park at your past school and you're hoping that's going to benefit you, unfortunately it won't. Also, if you were like, I hope no one ever looks at those again, I kind of just squeaked by, it's also not going to be a disadvantage to you. We're only looking at those averages for courses completed at Trent. And then here is a list. This is also found in the academic calendar of the disciplines. So you'll see here on this slide, we've got the humanities and the social sciences. So you'll notice kind of obvious Bachelor of Arts-based courses. So any courses from these that meet at the 1000 or beyond, 2000 or beyond, you can be taking courses from these areas to meet those social work requirements in years 1 and year 2, which also lead into the professional years admissions requirements. One thing to make note of is, for example, in a program like geography, geography is technically a science. There are some non-science related courses that say you can find in geography. That might be a good question to connect with Kennedy about if you have, say, a lot of geography but non-science geography courses, how the department will assess those. Typically speaking, it doesn't often happen with students, but if you have questions kind of in and around that area, the department can give you some good guidance of, would they consider this one geography course that's not science a science kind of based major because it comes from geography, or would it be considered an arts-based course for admissions purposes? And then psychology, you'll see here. So psychology, again, is part of that second bullet point that is credits from the humanities, social sciences, or psychology. So the psychology courses you take go towards that second bullet. Okay, I think Jackie did a good job of covering this, but we'll just do some review. When you are building your backup, you may want to look at minors, options, that type of thing. One thing to highlight is that social work is a single major only program. So a student can't do social work as a joint major. A student can't take a minor in social work. Those are not options. That doesn't necessarily preclude a student who is in social work and in the professional years from also adding in something like a minor or an option to their degree. However, it takes some very good planning on behalf of a student to be able to achieve that because in the professional years, there is not a lot of space or flexibility to fit in other things. So I always recommend that if students are looking to augment or to add things like a minor or an option onto their BSW degree, it's something that you should have mainly completed in advance of starting the professional years throughout the summers of your degree, or extending your graduation date to allow for you to complete those requirements after your professional years, because there is no expectation that social work will bend or modify so you can fit those things in during the professional years. You'll see that if a program, you'll see in the academic calendar which programs have minor options. They're listed there. And if you don't see a minor option in a program, that means it does not have a minor option. Okay. These are some of the options listings that you can add on. Jackie did a great job of explaining that options are more thematic on areas where we don't have disciplines, so they gather courses from a number of different disciplines.
Yes, and I see your questions coming through the chat. So there's a question in there about professional years stuff, and I wonder, Kennedy, maybe you could just speak to that when we get to that part of the presentation. But just to address the other one that came through about cross-listed courses, so using psych as an example, so 2270 is cross-listed between psych and philosophy. I think it's philosophy of mind. Will it be considered an eligible course towards the requirements? So yes, you could use that psych/philosophy course towards the 3.0 credits at the second year level in the humanities, social science, and or psych. You could also use it towards the 1.0 elective spot. So yes, is the short answer to that. I was also giving you a little pause because now we're getting into university degree requirements, which can be a bit dry. So I was like, let's switch it up and answer a question because now we're getting into the university rules. So as Jen mentioned, to get your degree at the end of the day, you really need to do two things. You need to meet your program requirements and the university degree requirements. And so we want to draw your attention to the university degree requirements now. I'm not going to go through all of them. You don't need story time with me. You're capable of reading these yourself. We're here to answer questions that you have about them as you go through your journey, but I wanted to highlight a few. So this slide and the next slide will go over all of the university rules. And I'm just going to draw your attention to a few of them that are the ones we often get questions about or the ones that catch students. So on this slide, number 4, there's a limit of how many credits you can have at the first year level for any degree. So university rules apply to any degree. So for number 4, the limit is 7.0 credits. So for any honors degree, you need 20 credits in total. Up to 7.0 can be at the first year level. The next one, number 5, there's a limit of how many D grades that students can have in courses that contribute to their major, joint major, or minor requirements. So D grades are in the 50s. And so the limit is 1.0 in the list of courses that are required for your major. Now, I say that so hesitantly, and I could go on forever about this. So I want to just bring you back to your section of the calendar, because your program section. So for social work, for the years 1 and 2 social work courses, you need 70% in those to apply to the professional years. So if you happen to get a 50 in one of those, you might be like, oh, it's okay for the university rules. True. However, if you want to apply to the professional years, you actually need a 70 or higher. So you always want to cross-reference these university rules with program requirements. Lots of disciplines like psych and soc, I think you need 60% in both of their first year courses as prereqs for second year level classes. So there's a lot of nuance that can come with this, but this is a rule we hear lots of questions about, and students often come to chat with us and to get clarification on. And then number 6, every student at Trent has to take half a credit from the approved Indigenous course list. So this is not any Indig class. There is a list of courses that have been approved to align with the content and pedagogy requirements to meet this. The list, it's linked when you're in the calendar. You can just go down to the page. If you do get into the professional years, I think Social Work 3004 fulfills this requirement. So this would be more so if you're needing to go the backup plan route, you want to make sure you're bringing that requirement in at some point through your degree. And then the next slide, I think, is a bit more self-explanatory. So 20 credits are required for any honors degree, and the BSW is an honors degree. A university regulation of a 65 GPA, so cumulative is your whole academic record, needs to be 65 or higher. You need 9.5 credits at the 3rd or 4th year level, and that's built in for you to the professional years. So you don't have to go out of your way to plan that. If you end up switching to a backup plan, then the rule is a little bit different. But again, you can find that in the university regulations section or university degree requirements section of the calendar to get that other number if you end up having to go to a backup plan.
Okay, so this is our last little bit of empowering you as students to kind of take control, take charge of your education. You'll find this in the academic calendar. And really what this quote says is that as a student, it is ultimately your responsibility to ensure that you are meeting the requirements for your university degree based on university requirements, program requirements, placement requirements if you're in the professional years. So it's really important that you take the steps that you need to be tracking your program requirements, like using the academic calendar, maybe having an Excel document for yourself, like really making sure that you know where you are, that you're meeting those requirements. I think I speak for Jackie and Kennedy. I will speak certainly for myself that when I work with students, I'm working with them kind of based on the information that I have at the time. Also with the idea that I'm human. And so when I'm working through with students, there are times where there's been something underlying that I've missed. They have an agreement with a professor or department that something counts where it doesn't typically count. Or I've just flat out made a mistake. And when I've had students come back and they're like, I actually think this counts here, or is that correct? And I'm like, oh my goodness, thank you so much. So even when you meet with an academic advisor, maybe I'll just speak for myself, it's really important that you review and you make sure that you understand the information that you've had, because at the end of the day, it is your responsibility to ensure that you've graduated. And we are here to help facilitate that process, help make things easier, help explain things. But it is still important that you have kind of full control in that area so you know that what is going on in that sense. Now it's Kennedy's turn.
Okay, thanks, Jen. So if you have successfully met the requirements in years 1 and 2, then you're eligible to apply to the professional years, which is years 3 and 4. And the reason why we differentiate is because there are placements associated with this. And I apologize if my voice is cutting out, I'm just getting over a sickness. So there's a placement in your second half of your 3rd year, and you'll be in placement for the entire duration of your 4th year. There's competition with other schools for placement spots, and also Peterborough campus doesn't have an overly large community, so there's a limit to the placements, and that's why the class sizes are so small. So if you have your 70 average, you're eligible. You have to have a 70 or higher, specifically in the social work courses. So you can, to answer a question I saw in the chat there, you can have a 65 or below in other courses, but as long as those social work courses are 70 or above and your cumulative average is a 70 or above, then you're okay. So this is an online application. It's a supplemental application. I'll explain more what that means in a minute. There's no direct entry. I'm so sorry. 1 second. Okay, there we go. We should be good now. There's no direct entry, so you cannot transfer directly into the professional years. At the bare minimum, you'll have to take your 2000 level social work courses. Now, as far as transfer credits that we grant, as Jen said, if you're coming in as, say, like an SSW, we would grant your 1,000 level social work courses as transfer credits. We would not grant the 2,000 level credits because those are really important for determining admissions. We would also, with an SSW, grant the third year placement hours. So you'd only have to do your fourth year placement in that case. But those hours are still required for our accreditation so that you are eligible to be a registered social worker when you graduate. As I said, the admission is competitive because of limited placement spots. So we take 60 total students. We take 30 on our Peterborough campus and 30 on our Durham campus. There we go. Okay, I think I kind of covered this already. Minimum of 70. Your transfer credits, as Jen said, will not be included in your cumulative average. So they count towards your 10 credits that you need to apply to the professional years, but your grades won't be included. So as Jen said, if you might have bombed those courses, it's okay because they're not included. For the supplemental application, we've made some changes in previous years, so make sure that you're always consulting the up-to-date admissions package, which you can find on our website. So it's trentu.ca/social work. That's where you'll find the admissions package. The 2024-2025 admissions package is up there now. So that is what you can refer to when you're preparing your supplemental application. So in addition to the typical things like your contact info, we also require a 1,000 word essay, and formal writing is expected for that essay. The essay prompt is included in the admissions package, so I won't spend too much time on that. But this essay is a chance for you to really critically reflect on your learning. So how have your lived experiences connected to what you've learned in your social work courses so far? It's a chance to expand on why you might want to be a social worker and the areas that you're passionate about or really interested in. Something that we've added for this admissions cycle is that there will be an opportunity to meet members of the admissions committee. This is not an interview. This is a relational process. It's a chance for you to potentially expand on the content of your essay if there's additional things that you want the admissions committee to know. It's a chance to potentially meet future profs and start that relationship building process. And the reason that we added this is because we understand that excellent academic writing is not all it takes to be a good social worker, and that might not be everybody's strength. So in the interest of making this process more accessible for people who might prefer oral communication, this is just another opportunity for you to showcase your strengths and let the admissions committee know why you'd like to be a social worker, why you'd be an awesome social worker, that type of thing. And we also recognize that this honors oral history, storytelling, things like that. So we're always making efforts to decolonize our program, and this is just one of the steps that we're taking towards that. So while this is an addition to the application process, it's not something to be scared of. The aim is actually to make the program more accessible for people. There's going to be more clarifying information, like I said, in the admissions package, but if you're feeling really confused by anything or you have more questions, you can always reach out to me. We can schedule a meeting and hopefully clarify some things for you there.
I think that's the last slide I have for you, Kelly. Is that what you were anticipating, or should there be something else?
I think if that's the last slide that we had for me, then I will just say that we understand this process can be really stressful. I'm an alum of the program myself, so I understand the feelings that come along with that. But we actually have at least one of our professional year students here today. And our professional year students have a really keen interest in supporting you folks. They actually really want to get connected with you general years folks. So I know Dion's here for sure. Dion, did you want to introduce yourself quickly?
Hi, everyone. I'm Dion. I am the third year rep from the Trent Durham campus. Some of you might have received an email from Kim earlier today introducing me and Dee, the fourth year rep, along with our email. So I can put my email in the chat. And if any of you want to reach out to me, either whether you go to Trent Durham or Peterborough, I'd be happy to connect with you. One of my big focuses as a rep is to strengthen the sense of community within the social work program. So please feel free to reach out if you have any questions about what the professional years are like or any concerns whatsoever. So I'm just going to type in my email now. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Dion. I guess we can get to questions now. I see that there was some more contributions from the chat, if that's all we had for the PowerPoint.
Yeah, okay, so I'm just gonna move over. We do have some degree planning information on the advising website. Maybe we'll do questions kind of first, and then if we have time, we'll go back to that. But just note that the advising website, a little kind of promotion for us, has a ton of really valuable information. Degree planning, scheduling, we've got a bunch of videos on self-service, which is our new course registration system and all sorts of things. So the advising website has a lot of valuable information, including some really great degree planning files. Like we have an Excel sheet that we can go over if there is time, that I just find like a really valuable way to do some degree planning, get you into that thought process. Okay, Kennedy, do you want to address some of these? Would you like me to help out with any of them?
Yeah, I think we've covered the first few. So in the online application, you do have the option of choosing whether you'd have a preference for Peterborough, but open to both, vice versa, preference for Durham campus, open to both, or I only want to be considered for the Peterborough campus, I only want to be considered for the Durham campus. Obviously, saying that you're open to both campuses could improve your chances of being accepted. I think I'm answering that question. Now, you might be given an offer for a campus that's not your preferred campus. And so at that point, that's up to you if that's something you want to do, but it's a possibility.
In my experience, having done Kennedy's role, when I would be doing admissions, people would get like rated, not people, the files, the accounts would get rated. And then when we were offering places in admissions, we would provide like an offer to the first choice where possible. And when we were getting down towards the end, if there were only Durham spaces left and a student had put Peterborough only, they would be skipped to the next person who had Durham as an option. So if you are only able to attend the Peterborough or the Durham campus, it's important that you indicate that as such. It potentially does limit your chances. But if you're admitted to the Durham campus and you can only attend courses in Peterborough, that's not going to work, because the expectation is that you are attending courses in Durham. And if that's not possible, then that won't work. And kind of vice versa. So I think it's important to be like accurate in that. So if you can't attend both, if that's not a possibility, then put down which one you can attend. But if you can, even if you have a preference, put down your preferred Peterborough, preferred Durham, but would go to the other, which does open up spaces.
I'm seeing that I missed Olivia's question, so I apologize. We used to have applicants list some work and volunteer experiences, but we actually took that out of this year's application because we recognize that with intersectionality, depending on people's backgrounds, they might have not had the opportunity to volunteer. Obviously, if you're somebody who is working 2 jobs, taking care of your family, that type of thing, you might not be out there volunteering. And for our students coming directly out of high school, they probably haven't had the chance to work in the field either. So just in an effort to make that process more fair, you don't have to list those experiences. However, it would be really valuable if you can reflect on your experiences working in the field in your supplemental essay. that's a really great opportunity to link your learning with your experience.
So I'll just jump in with a quick like who to contact, and then I see there's another question that's come in the chat. So just like in us wanting to wrap up our time together today, we want to hold space for questions and also give you a bit of information on like how does our role, so Jen and my role, differ from Kennedy's role? What are we here to support you with? So what we find is that folks in the general years 1 and 2, are ones that typically come to see an academic advisor. And we will talk with you about, yes, the general social work requirements and also the backup plan. So our job is to know the entire academic calendar and help you navigate it. For folks who are in the professional years and have social work specific requirements, that's when you'd really want to reach out to Kennedy as an expert on all the happenings within the social work department. So just to clarify when you would come and chat with an advisor versus when you would talk with Kennedy. And I know folks have been putting their questions in the chat, which is amazing. And Kennedy, you just replied to one about how to connect with you, booking appointments. And you sent your link, which is great. Does anyone else have any questions for us? Yes, I see a yes in the chat. Kim, you're welcome to unmute and ask, or just you're welcome to type it too.
I can just jump in and answer Paul's question there. We don't see more than 120 applicants a year. That would be an exceptionally busy year to get over 100. So it's usually just under 100 applications for 60 spots.
Okay, so I had a question. I am a first year student, first semester. So I have a question. How do I group my credits for my first semester, this semester? For example, I'm doing social work, I'm taking psychology, I'm taking linguistics. Like, is it enough for like my first semester?
I think in that situation, that would be like a really great thing to actually make an appointment with an academic advisor. And in an academic advising appointment, we can go over and see what you're taking. We can talk about planning for the future, but I think that's more of like a personal kind of one-on-one with an academic advisor question to go over those things.
All right, no problem. Thank you so much.
The admissions essay should be written in APA 7th. You can include references and citations if you wish, and your references, your reference page will not be included in your total 1,000 word count. If you don't get into the professional years, you can do a master's of social work with a different honors degree. So most backup options that people tend to go to, you absolutely can still get an MSW with those as well. The only difference would be somebody with a BSW can complete their MSW in 1 year, whereas somebody who has a different honors degree would have to spend 2 years completing their MSW.
Sorry, I have a quick question. So if we can still take our masters, what's really the difference between the professional years and the masters? Just that year, like kind of speed it up a bit?
It also affects admissions rates. So a master's program really values field experience. You're much more likely to get accepted for your master's if you have worked in the field, which somebody with a different degree might not have had that opportunity.
In my experience as well, there are more BSW to master's pathways than there are non-BSW degrees to MSW pathways. So it's a less, not a less common, but kind of a less common pathway. Karen had a question about, can we apply to other universities for professional years? Social work in Ontario, in Canada, is different at every university. Our program was originally kind of envisioned based on the Huron or Kings through Western. I can't remember which one it is. And so they have like a similar kind of professional years, a second level entry program. But it really depends on the universities you're looking at and how their program is created. So for example, Carleton, you apply directly into social work and you're in social work from year one, or at least that's how it was a couple of years ago. So not every school has professional years like Trent does, and they all have different requirements. It's standardized in that it's all CASB approved, but it's not standardized. It's not standardized in that it is all the same at every single university that has a CASB accredited social work program.
I can definitely give examples of types of placements. So we have lots of placements ranging from every level of practice, the macro, mezzo, micro. So you could be doing research, policy analysis or development, working with families, working with the community, working within child welfare, education. Big Brothers Big Sisters has placements for students as well. If you're more curious about the types of placements, you can connect with Travis Peck. He's our field education coordinator, and he could give you a better idea of what you could expect.
I'm bouncing a little bit, but going back to the question around doing a master's degree after, it made me think of a website that I referenced quite a bit in my own journey doing that through the CASWE. So I just tried to dig it up. So I'm gonna share that link in the chat. But as Jen mentioned, the options for folks who don't have a BSW and want to do an MSW are certainly more limited. And I found their website to be really helpful in that it lists all the institutions that have social work programs at the bachelor's, master's, and PhD level. And so it can help narrow the research scope a little bit, or like make it more efficient, where you can just use this list to see, okay, who has master's programs, and then Google it to see if they take folks without a BSW.
There are no hospital placements, so hospitals usually only open up to MSWs and MSW students, which Jen has helpfully put in the chat as well. I'm just seeing that.
I'm just getting some questions about like volunteer experiences, and Kennedy, maybe you have a little bit more insight into it, because the volunteer isn't necessarily a component of the admissions process anymore. It sounds like it's something that I think it has caused students a lot of stress in the past, especially when COVID happened. But I think what the program is looking for is like volunteer experience when it comes into like a reflective practice and like things that you've learned in the process. So, I mean, a volunteer experience can be literally anywhere where you can derive social work type experience or reflection. Like I think back to when I'm not a social worker by practice, by education, but like when I worked at Tim Hortons in high school, there were times that I bet there were social work kind of elements that I could get some reflective practice to reflect on in writing my admissions essay. So I don't think the program is looking for specific experiences, specific backgrounds, specific anything. They're looking for students to reflect on the experiences they have, diverse, involving lots of different aspects, maybe family, maybe work, maybe volunteer, maybe interpersonal, and reflecting on how what they're learning in their social work courses can be integrated into helping their understanding and that type of thing of what's going on. But there isn't a specific checkbox that a student worked at a hospital or volunteered at like a hospital or a school or a summer camp. There's not those kind of specific checkmarks.
Did anyone have any last burning questions before we wrap things up? No, I think we might be good to close then. So thank you all so much for your presence and participation today. Thank you, Dion, and anyone else from the professional years who joined us. We will make sure to download this recording, and then Kennedy will send it out to you all. Thanks so much for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your day.